And now for the Eagle Leadership Award. Rhode Island's Secretary of State, Nellie Gorbea, made history when she was sworn in on January 6th of 2015, becoming the first Hispanic elected to statewide office in New England. And while she fell a bit short on Tuesday in her bid for governor, Nellie has served the state of Rhode Island with distinction. And we are grateful for her leadership. Let's give it up for Nellie Gorbea, who will now offer remarks and introduce our honoree.
Okay, I was totally under control here, people. Buenas tardes, familia. Good afternoon, family. Thank you, Mickey, for bringing us together. Thank you for believing in Rhode Island and the progress that we have seen. You know, for many of us, including me, this is a bittersweet moment. I'm not going to deny it. You know, when Mickey called to tell me that they had selected Providence for this national event, I thought, great, we're going to have so much celebrating to do. I mean, it's the beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month. And we're going to have all these people on the ballot. It's going to be awesome. And then the cycle took hold, and campaigns were formed, and greater forces, political, economic, started to honestly tear us apart. We started cannibalizing our own. We worked on different campaigns. You know, we resurrected grudges over who didn't speak to so-and-so. It was all, you know, the fog of war, right, of the campaign cycles. And I can't speak for any other campaigns, but I can speak for my own. And I know that some people here in the audience have asked others to ask me how I'm doing. I'm fine. Thank you very much. I'm spending a lot more time with my family, my girls. I'm actually, not having to, watch social media or even, honestly, the news. Taking a break from all of that. But I would be lying if I didn't tell you that, yeah, it's sad because we did have an opportunity that we weren't able to go, and I know that my mentor in this field, Mayor Ángel Taveras, knows a lot of what I'm talking about and how it feels, and so I want to give a shout out and a thanks to him for his doing this before me. The good news is that those dreams that we formed decades ago, and Dr. Pablo Rodriguez was an instrumental helper in these dreams, have taken hold, and there will be other opportunities as well. And so, while I'm going to be off stage for the foreseeable future in the political arena, I'm excited about what holds in Rhode Island's future. We have some great candidates going forward at the statewide, at the municipal levels. We can still have a very important role to play in the future of Rhode Island. And to quote what somebody here said, one of the Latino leaders said before, you know, what is good for the Latino community is good for the state of Rhode Island. It's absolutely true, because we all have the same dreams. We want more affordable housing. We want education. We want to deal with climate change, just like everybody else. But, you know, we have our own little version of it. We have our own flavor to it. We have our own perspectives of lives that haven't been at the policymaking table. And so going forward, I'm going to ask you that we need to do two things. You need to come together for the remaining candidacies. You absolutely do. Because we can't let these opportunities fall by the wayside. There's no time to, like the primary system is so tight with the general, there's no time to like go hang out at the beach while everybody else does something. Well, I guess summer's over, but anyway. The island person in me. So let's get over the primary, win the general election, and show that the Latinx community is ready for, the next wave. And continue to show the country that the most diverse Latinx population in the country is elected in the state of Rhode Island, with more than half being Latinas. No other state in the country has that kind of legacy except Rhode Island. And now, actually, on to our speaker. That's right, you're here. Arturo Vargas. So I have the distinct honor of being able to introduce today's keynote speaker, my very dear friend, Arturo Vargas, the CEO of the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials. I'm saying that for those who are appointed, you can become a member too. This is personal for me. I'm actually on the board and have been encouraging my raileos, as I affectionately call you, to join up and be a part of this. NALEO is an amazing organization that is building the capacity of leadership among elected and appointed ranks throughout the country. And in addition to that, Arturo has had a special relationship with Rhode Island, and now it's time for storytelling because we have younger people who haven't been here for the 30 years that we have. And Arturo was actually, his first keynote speech in Rhode Island was about 29 years ago when some 20-something-year-old, Nelly Gorbea, who was organizing a Saturday morning workshop conference on how government works, because that's what everybody wants to do on a Saturday morning, learn how a school committee works, learn how the General Assembly works. Arturo had just been appointed executive director, and I called him up, and he came. And he gave a speech, and I'm just gonna give you that teaser. He was our keynote speaker at that one moment. And there was an interesting thing that happened that day that motivated many of us to continue going forward. Then he was our REALPAC, Rhode Island Latino Political Action Committee 10th anniversary speaker, when we had about a handful of Latinos elected. And now here we are on the cusp of, going from 30 to, who knows, maybe 40, maybe 50, with major statewide offices. And Arturo has been that head of an organization where we could always call and say, we're doing redistricting, we think we need to sue. What do we need to do? How do we, message for the vaccinations? How do we, and Arturo has always been there to pick up the phone and say, here, these are some resources, these are people you can talk to. He's like our own personal, we know a guy. And so, thank you, Arturo, because what you're seeing in this room today is absolutely part of your legacy as CEO of NALEO, and has given this as a result. Your availability, you're always willing to help us out, is, these are the fruits of that responsiveness. And I don't think we could have the community of elected and appointed officials that we have now had it not been for your leadership, for your dedication. He still has a message from me on Christmas Eve that I don't know what I was thinking, with a policy idea that I gave him. But, it's thanks to you. And so I am absolutely thrilled to be able to have you here in Rhode Island. Because when Arturo comes, great things happen over the next several years. So thank you again, Miki. Thank you, Arturo. Please come up and give us your remarks. Thanks. And of course, because I'm still an elected official, I have a citation.
Buenas tardes. ¿Cómo están todos? Thank you, Secretary of State Nelly Gorbea, for that amazing introduction and very humbling to include me and the work of my colleagues at NALEO and NALEO Educational Fund and being a small part of what has happened here in what I consider to be the miracle of Rhode Island. Thank you, Mickey Ibarra, for the recognition with the Eagle Award. You and I go back also some 30 years, and I've seen this organization grow and bring together Latino leaders in communities all over the country. And as he recounted earlier today, people asked him, why Providence? Well, you know, 25 years ago, I asked the same question, why Providence? And we now know the answer to that. I'd like to recognize some of my board members who are here. The chair of the NALEO Educational Fund, Mara Candelaria Reardon. You met Nelly Gorbea. Emilio Gonzalez from Verizon. Ruben Barrales from Wells Fargo. State Representative Carlos Tobon. Thank you. Thank you for being here, for your support. I also want to give a special thank you to the sponsors of this event. You know, as a CEO of a nonprofit, I know how important it is that corporate America invests in our community, in our institutions. So thank you to the sponsors for being here. I also like to recognize my colleague. He's the director of the NALEO office for the Northeast, Orlando Ovalles. Y más que nada, gracias a todos ustedes por estar aquí esta tarde. You know, Mickey asked me to speak for 15 minutes, and all I can say is that's a deadly proposition. Give somebody who loves to talk a microphone and tell them you got 15 minutes, you're asking for it. And believe me, I know, because I work in a field where people love to talk in front of a microphone. But as Nelly was mentioning, today for me is a remarkable homecoming here in Providence, because it was about 25 years ago that this young woman with the Rhode Island Foundation called me up and said, hey, and she says it like that, right? Hey, I need you to come to Rhode Island to talk about the need to build Latino political power. And I said, absolutely. You know, I was new in my position, and I knew you could not be a national organization if all you do is stay in Los Angeles. So I hopped on a plane, I came to Providence, and I spoke at this Saturday morning event. And I was giving my remarks, and all of a sudden I was told, stop talking. Because the mayor of Providence, Buddy Cianci, had arrived very, very late, and he decided he needed to make his remarks now, in the middle of mine. So, you know, being a good, polite Latino, I said, of course. And so for the next several minutes, more than 15, I think, we listened to Cianci talk about, well, basically himself. When he left, I looked around the room and I told everybody, and that's why you need to build Latino political power. And just look at what this state has done and what this Latino community has achieved. Felicidades. And the work is not done. You know, Mickey asked me to speak about overcoming obstacles. And with your permission, I'd like to focus on the inspirations that have, from the giants of my life, and those are my parents, and how what they taught me has helped me overcome obstacles. They taught me some key principles. Education is foremost. Advocate for your community. Civic participation is essential. And this country changes us as much as we change her. You know, I have been known to show up in newspapers here and there and be on television and radio. But the first time I appeared in the Los Angeles Times was when I was in 5th grade. And the front page had a photograph of a number of Latino families boycotting the local elementary school. And I was in that photograph carrying my picket sign saying, "We demand a quality education." And my mother was right next to me, pushing my 5-year-old brother in a stroller. Several weeks earlier, my parents had joined with other parents and formed a group called Padres Unidos. Their mission was to force the elementary school to end double sessions, to create more playground space, to build a cafeteria, and to end the dangerous overcrowding in our elementary school. One night, they risked being arrested because they actually held a sit-in in the principal's office demanding a meeting. It was extraordinary for my parents to take such a public, activist approach. They always were the kind that, hey, keep your head down, no te metas en líos, you know, just be a good person. But they had the courage to demand a quality education for their children, and that's what drove them. A year later, I was asked to represent the 6th graders in the groundbreaking ceremony for the brand new school building. And my mother accepted the challenge of being part of the solution by going to work at that elementary school as a part-time teacher's aide. So began my understanding of the importance of education and advocacy. It's what drove me to want to be an educator. I was determined to go back to my high school and to be a teacher. I wanted to be the Chicano Welcome Back Cotter. Okay, I know how old this audience is because only a few people laughed. Google Welcome Back Cotter and you'll see what I mean. Well, my alma mater did not have any vacancies for a social science or Spanish as a foreign language teacher. There was an opening, however, at a neighboring high school in East LA called Garfield High School, where the extraordinary Jaime Escalante, made famous by the movie Stand and Deliver, was still on the faculty. I was crushed when the principal pooh-poohed my 2 Stanford degrees and my teaching credential and declined to hire me, telling me that the students would just eat me up alive. Fortunately, an administrator at Stanford sent me a job announcement to be an education policy fellow at the National Council of La Raza in Washington, D.C. Now, I have never heard of NCLR before in my life, but I figured, hey, anybody who calls themselves La Raza can't be all bad. So I applied and I got the position and I stayed for 3 years. I'm indebted to my mentors, Lori Oram, Charles Kamasaki, Emily McKay, and most of all, Raul Izaguirre, for what I learned in my 3 years there. And I am especially grateful to Emily McKay because she was the one who taught me how to write, not Stanford. And it's a skill I cherish deeply. In 1988, I returned to Los Angeles having been hired by MALDEF to lead its 1990 census program. I spent 7 years working at MALDEF with gifted lawyers and advocates and benefiting from more mentors, Gloria Rubio Cortez, Richard Fajardo, Richard Larson, and Antonia Hernandez. I am truly humbled today that I am being added to a list of extraordinary American leaders that includes Raul Izaguirre and Antonia Hernandez. My final project at MALDEF was in 1994, was to try to defeat Proposition 187. It was the granddaddy of all of the anti-immigrant measures that have since come out of that period. California was in the throes of its most anti-immigrant, anti-Mexican periods. And the governor at the time, Pete Wilson, had decided to seize upon the hate against Mexicans and immigrants and seize upon the support for Proposition 187 to get himself reelected. And he succeeded. His campaign blamed Mexicans and immigrants for California's poor economy and everything that was wrong. But that moment defined California's future. Earlier that year, I dropped in on my parents. And one day, my mother announced that she had just attended a naturalization application completion workshop organized by a group called NALEO. I was shocked and I was thrilled. When the time came, I took her to her naturalization interview, and then I took her to her swearing-in ceremony at the Los Angeles Convention Center. And as we celebrated her adopting her new country, I just had to ask, Mami, ¿por qué después de 44 años finalmente se ha hecho ciudadana? And she looked at me and she said, pues hijo, fue por dos razones. Primero, por todo el trabajo que tú has hecho. And I thought, oh my God, she understands my work. And then she went on to say, porque quiero votar contra ese viejo Pete Wilson. And the next year, she voted to legalize medical marijuana. Since becoming a U.S. citizen, she never missed an election. It is only the illness of advanced dementia that has silenced her voice as a voter. But my mother was one of hundreds of thousands of Latino lawful permanent residents who were so motivated by anger to apply for naturalization in the second half of the 1990s. Immigrant voters are one of the dynamics that has profoundly changed the California electorate and politics, shaping the state to the place that it is today. Immigrants did that, including my naturalized mother and my US-born father who grew up in Mexico. When my parents came to the United States in 1952, my mother had some tightly held views. She did not wear pants, porque es mujer. She did not work out of the home, porque es mujer. She insisted that her only daughter feed the meals to her brothers, make our beds, and wash the dishes, porque es mujer. Well, in 2007, with the money that she earned from her pension, she sent a $50 check to Hillary Rodham Clinton for president. And I asked her why. And she replied, porque es mujer. Education is foremost. Advocate for your community. Civic participation is essential. This country changes us as much as we change her. These are the principles that have guided my journey in service to our community and the nation for nearly 38 years, the past 28 of them at NALEO. As a very young education policy advocate at NCLR, I had the privilege to meet and work with the late Congressman Edward Roybal, and to work closely with him during my first years as executive director of NALEO. He served 30 years in the US Congress, House of Representatives, rising to become one of the 13 cardinals, which means he was a chairman of one of the appropriations subcommittees. He founded, along with the four other Latinos in Congress at the time, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus in 1976, and that same year, he founded NALEO and was its president for 20 years. You know, last night I was at the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute's gala. I know a few of you who are here were there. And we celebrated his daughter's work for the past 30 years, Congresswoman Lucille Roybal Allard, who is now retiring from Congress, having served as long a term in Congress as her father, she herself also rising to be a cardinal in the US House of Representatives. It was an amazing night last night. But what I remember about Mr. Congressman Roybal is that he was a fierce advocate for civil rights, for public education, the needs of seniors, and public health. It's why the campus of the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta bear his name. So the next time you see a news story about COVID or Mpox and the CDC building is on television, look for his name because it says the Centers for Disease Control, Edward R. Roybal campus on the main building. Congressman Roybal served at a time when policymakers could disagree without being disagreeable, when public service as an elected official was performed with dignity, integrity, and respect for colleagues of your own party or the opposite party. The congressman was an extraordinary American and leader. Over the past few years, everything we've gone through in the past 6 years now, I've often thought what Congressman Roybal would think about the state of our politics and the state of our democracy. And I could hear his gruff voice in my head saying, "Why do you think we founded NALEO?" With NALEO being the national membership organization of Latino elected and appointed officials, and the NALEO Educational Fund as the nation's leading nonprofit that empowers Latinos to participate fully in the American political process, I feel a weight of responsibility that NALEO has to our country at this moment. I am comforted by knowing that we are not alone. There is the NALEO network of leaders and our supporters, organizations like the Latino Leaders Network, all of you who are here in this room, and thousands more who comprise this political community. There truly are obstacles for all of us to overcome in the months ahead. But I believe that with each other's support and adhering to the principles that have guided my work, education is foremost, advocate for your community, civic participation is essential. This country changes us as much as we change her. We can persevere. So thank you again for this wonderful honor. And when you honor me, you honor my parents. Gracias.
Arturo Vargas, on behalf of the Latino Leaders Network, we are pleased to present you with our Eagle Leadership Award for your contribution, outstanding service to our community and to our nation. Arturo Vargas.